Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining remotely. Michael Bulbenko. I've been with the company, are you ready for this, 32 years. I have been a professional commercial photographer, and I've been in the movie business also going back to, I hate to say that, the 1980s. So, but I'm going to show you something really cool. I think if you can see on my screen right now, something that we are showing that's new. It hasn't been released to the public yet, but there is something called Frame.io. Frame.io is a company that was developed for the movie business, for collaboration between on-set and editors and remote producers. And we are the first camera company in the world that has this direct camera to cloud upload from a stills camera. So I just shot some pictures, and if you see on the screen up here at the top, it says new files added. If I click on that, these are pictures. There they are, as you can see. Those are shots you just saw me shoot them a moment ago. Now there's video too. So somebody in the audience says, wait, is there video? Well, this is, look at that. Hang on, let me open that. This is video from this morning, okay? Now, okay, so what is it you can do with this? What was the purpose of all this? The purpose of all this is for very, very quick collaboration. You can have an editor that can actually be seeing all this and then can download the files as they're basically being shot, because you can have upload happening while you're shooting or immediately after. You can download the proxy files and start to edit while production is actually still happening on the set. You can get somebody that types in a comment, like I can say here, I can say shaky shot, okay, which it was. I hit send, and if you look on the right-hand side, there's a comment, okay? Everybody in the project sees that comment, so you can have a dialogue back and forth. I can mark up this image. Let's say for some reason I want to put a circle right here, okay? I can send that. It's an annotation. There's another message. So whoever gets that, they can click on that message. You can see that annotation appearing on the screen. It doesn't matter what size your screen is. It can be on their phone. It could be an app. It can be on, a big screen TV. The image scales, okay? So that is one of the new things that we're the first stills company in the world to have that. The movie business has been doing this for several years, and they have it by way of transmitters that they attach to the back of the cameras to do that. We have this direct in the camera, okay? It will be publicly released sometime around the NAB show, which is coming up in the middle of April. And right now it only works with the Fujifilm X-H2 and the X-H2S cameras and this file transmitter hand grip. There's plenty more information on the internet if you go to the Fujifilm-X.com website or go to the frame.io and look it up. If you are a Creative Cloud subscriber, the Adobe Creative Cloud, you already have access to a free Frame.io account. It won't give you camera uploads, but you can get in there and you can start dabbling with it yourself. You can upload from your desktop. Anyway, that's sort of the shape of the way things are moving in the business. You can imagine, especially if you're a stills photographer, you're doing a fashion shoot or a commercial shoot, and you have remote art directors or the owner of a company or something like that that is on the other side of the world, they can give you immediate feedback, and or suggestions to help you as you're actually in production. For wedding photographers, you could be shooting a wedding. You can have, some relative, again, on the other side of the world that can't make it to the wedding. They can see the photos uploading in real time, and they can download them themselves, or they can type in something like, hey, I want a large print of this, or something like that. So again, like I said, that is sort of the shape of things to come. Trying to see, okay, I'm going to hide that. Some of the things that I have done personally like I say, I shoot primarily a lot of music videos. This happens to be uh, a movie that I shot about a year and a half ago. You can make a full-blown feature film for $10,000. That's what this film was. It was shot in 5 days, $10,000 on small $1,700 cameras. It wasn't even this one, it was a previous generation. I'm just saying that out there to all of you out there to encourage you, okay, that the tools that are available now, like these hybrid cameras, which I'm going to define, are able to give you complete motion picture, full broadcast ready and theater ready images right out of the camera. So what we make now in Fujifilm and most of the other manufacturers, basically everybody makes good cameras. You can't buy a bad camera anymore. The things that set us apart, Fujifilm is the last 4 letters of our name, F-I-L-M. I'm not going to go into that, but you can go on our website. What we have is we have built-in film simulations in our cameras that are actual true mathematical reproductions of various film stocks. It's fantastic. That is something, because we've been around since 1934. We know how to do that, and that completely sets us apart from all the other camera manufacturers. What is a hybrid camera? Well, so hopefully this will play. So I'm not going to show you the whole thing. This is a behind the scenes that I did for one of our photographers who was shooting for a world-class motorcyclist named Robbie Madison. And that's one of the things that I do. All done with a small camera. All right, just basically BTS stuff, behind the scenes, okay? Now, also, I do music videos. This was a music video that was shot just about 6 months ago. Just to show you that I come from a cinema background, so my take is very movie-like. I'm not a fast cuts kind of guy. And this was a story about, that goes with the music, about a lady that has Alzheimer's. And the ending, I'm not going to make you sit through the whole 3 minutes, but as you can see, what we're doing is this is very, very full-on professional production value. Again, done with very, very small, simple $1,500 cameras. We make really, really great lenses as well. Yeah, I'm not going to... All right, I'm not going to make it. The color actually changes in the movie. So it starts out in this sort of very subdued, low key, low contrast, because we're sort of in the fogginess of her mind. And then she sees a reflection of herself in the mirror. I'll just give it another 10 seconds. You can see what we're doing here. When she walks away, watch it. Watch what happens to this photograph. The photograph comes to life, and that's her younger self. And now her younger self is going to introduce her back into her memories. All right, we'll stop there. Now, this, I do commercial still photography. This is a very expensive hypercar. And this is a screenshot off of Adobe Bridge. And if you can see what I'm enlarging, okay, is just the medallion off that car. And you can see how it's completely, totally sharp. So that's an incredible amount of magnification. Here's another camera, another car. I'm doing the same thing. So that is from one of our hybrid cameras. That is this right here. And you can see if I put my hand, it's just really the size of my hand. This is called the GFX 100S. And it is a 100 megapixel camera. And you can see how small and light it is, and it's a very, very large sensor. Yeah, you probably won't be able to make that out, those of you that are remote. This is a larger than full frame 35 millimeter sensor. It's a medium format in film language, and it's $6,000, but it does phenomenal video as well. So you can rig it out with some of our small prime lenses. As you can see here, it's on a cage. It's hanging off of C-stands for some live music broadcasts. Here it is tricked out with one of our $40,000 Premista cinema zoom lenses that we make. Here is that same thing built on a shoulder rig. So it's light enough to carry on your shoulder. It's a small body. The lens is actually big. Here it is mounted on a Steadicam. So we do all of our internal marketing videos using this camera and lens setup. You can look at them. They're online. You can find them on our website or on YouTube. It's a series of sitcoms that we make called All Sales Final. They're about 3 minutes long, and they take place at a mythical camera store. But they're full-blown cinema productions. They take several days to shoot. So there's two different body styles of this camera. One is that smaller one that I held, and you can see it on this. And then there's a larger one, the original one, the GFX 100, that came out about 4 years ago. They're the same sensor, the same processor. They differ in body style. So it is a system. They have very, very high fast processors. They've got phenomenally good autofocus. So remember, you saw the size of that sensor. This is larger than full frame, okay? The other cameras in that class either don't have autofocus at all or don't have it anywhere close to us. We also do full-on 4K video, internal, 4K 10-bit video, internal, and also through the HDMI out, which is like I showed you that we're using it in cinema productions. So there's $10,000 for the bigger body, there's $6,000 for the smaller one. And you say, okay, Michael, why are you, I'm a college kid. Why are you trying to sell me on a $6,000 camera? Well, I'll show you why. One of the things you can do with this, if you remember I said it was 100 megapixels, right? So this was a video I did for a band right in early 2021. And this was, they had released a song that they were about to go out and perform. And this was right at the height of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So they couldn't perform. All the venues shut down. No restaurants were open, bars weren't open. They wanted to introduce this song. And the song is called Great Distances. And if you see it, so cinematically, we shot it green screen. And the color changes from being subdued in black and white into color. But what I want to point out to you is the background. The background on all of these, which you call background plates, were all done with this 100 megapixel camera. And in particular, these shots that are going to be coming up shortly, is I created to design to look like you're actually driving through the road. Let this catch up a second. Sorry? They're all in the same place. They're all shot actually in my family room. Green screen was just set up there. They all came in one at a time because it was height of pandemic again. We couldn't have them together except for these two. Now look at the background. Do you see how it looks like you're actually driving? I mean, yeah, it's a little bit fake, but that was the idea, is that we're traveling down these country roads. How do you do that? Well, you do that with having ultra high resolution. So by having 100 megapixels to shoot those background plates, when I bring that into the editor, okay, I can just keep zooming and zooming and zooming and zooming digitally without losing any quality because I have so much incredible resolution. So that is part of what I'm saying, see, about the hybrid world. So you can take stills and incorporate them into video at the same time. So you say, okay, Michael, again, the camera's too big, too expensive. I want something small and portable. So this is now where we get into our other cameras that are APS-C format, or in the movie world, they're known as Super 35. And for people, those of you out there, the Super 35 name refers to the cinema version of APS-C size, which is the film sensor. That size aperture, that film size, has been the de facto film size for like the last 75 years. That is what the majority of film cameras out there still are. Yes, there are 35 millimeter full frame cinema cameras on the market now too, but they are new. The majority is still shot on APS-C Super 35, which is why we stick with that. There's a couple of BTS shots of that $10,000 movie that I made, okay? To show you that they're small, they're light, very easy to put on a gimbal, very easy to make a shoulder rig. So these cameras, these hybrid cameras, are top of the lines. We have an H2S and an H2. One is a 26 megapixel sensor, one is a 40 megapixel sensor. And the differences between them is not just in the resolution of the sensor, but the H2S, the 26 one, has a much faster sensor. It's what's called a stacked sensor. And the information is transported through that sensor much, much faster, which means the autofocus is way better. And also there's something called the rolling shutter effect. I'll let you look that up. It's a thing that causes images to go tilted when you pan left and right. So it's not a good thing, but the stack sensor is much faster and it basically eliminates that. And it will shoot 6K in what's known as ProRes, which is a professional codec. The H2 camera, which is the higher resolution camera, will actually do 8K video in ProRes. But it's not as fast a sensor. So the H2S can actually do 120 frames per second in 4K, whereas the H2 will do only 60 frames per second in 4K. But it's capable of 8K in the other aspect ratios and the other frame rates. They all have internal IBIS, in-body image stabilization. That's what IBIS stands for. We have up to 7 stops worth of compensation. What that means is it's 7 shutter speeds worth of stability. So if you had to shoot something at 500th of a second, but it's too dark to do that, okay, you could drop 5 shutter speeds and the IBIS will still give you a sharp picture. You can work with external recorders. The internal record time is 2 hours. So it's very easy to shoot an entire performance, a play, or anything like that without having to even cut. So just literally a few days ago, I was at the 12 Hours of Sebring race in Florida. It's an endurance race, shooting for a car company. And you ask, well, what do I need 120 frames per second? So that's what this is. 120 frames per second looks like this. When you have a car that's doing 150 or 170, that's what having 120 frames per second is able to do for you. So you shoot at a much, much higher frame rate, but you play it back at a regular frame rate. So the regular motion picture frame rate is 24. I shot it at 120, so that's basically 5 times slowdown, okay? That's one of the advantages, again, of having a hybrid camera that can do high frame rates and stuff like that. Now, you'll notice that the picture quality on that looks really yucky, okay? I'll explain why that is in a few slides, but I left it yucky on purpose to prove to you that was straight out of camera. But I'll explain to you why that looks like that. So the H2S, like I said, it does something called 6K, it does something called open gate. So you're used to seeing things on TV and in theaters, on your phones, on the screens that are kind of the 16:9 or a 17:9 aspect ratio. So it's definitely wider than it is tall, okay? Open gate is actually more square. The term open gate means the entire sensor, not cropped in any way, shape, or form. So we have basically an almost squarish picture on the H2S at the 6.2 resolution. What that's good for is it gives you the ability to recrop in post-production. right? So if you shoot it open gate and you decide later that you want to frame it a little higher or a little lower, a little more left or right, in post-production, you can recrop all that. It's also good when you're using something called anamorphic lenses. I'm going to ask you to look that up for those of you at home. Anamorphic is an older technology that basically takes the image and squeezes it left to right. And it looks really weird and distorted, but it needs a more square aspect ratio to capture in. So having open gate works better for anamorphic lenses. And then also we have two F-log tone curves. Okay, so that shot, this picture of the car, the reason that's shot so flat, it's in something called F-log, Fujifilm log. Every camera manufacturer has their own variety of log. Log stands for logarithmic. It is a tone curve. It's a way to extract basically almost the full maximum data of dynamic range off of your sensor. All television movie productions all record in log at the minimum. Some do record in video raw, okay? But having log in the camera, if you are going to go into full-blown movie work, is really, really important. Because in our cameras, you can get 13, 14 stops, over 14 stops of dynamic range. That's really important because if you make a mistake when you're on the set on a movie, all right, you don't want to ruin it because you can't go back and reshoot the movie, even if you're doing a wedding video, okay? So having log is really important. This slide shows you just how incredibly valuable this is. And this was our older log. This I created about 2 years ago before we had the second F log. The camera this came off of was actually only 12 stops of dynamic range. But if you see, that is the waveform of me, of that image. I'm standing in bright, direct Southern California sunlight. I'm wearing a black hat and a pure white shirt. And if you look at the waveform, if you look at the top where it says 100, you'll see that none of that white exceeds 100. It's never clipped. And if you look at the black, the bottom part, none of the blacks are actually pure black. This means I have room to adjust the contrast pretty much as I want. That's the beauty of shooting log. And I know that's very, very technical, especially for some of you who haven't been in film schools yet, but giving you a leg up. Okay, you say, hey, but I want great autofocus, okay? Now, the movie industry lives absolutely 99% of the time on pure manual focus. They don't do autofocus unless they really, really have to, okay? It's all manual focus. They don't want any mistakes, right? You're paying actors millions and millions of dollars to be there, and you have crews of 100. You don't want things going wrong with autofocus. But for those of us that live in the indie world or are doing smaller productions, autofocus is phenomenal, especially if it works. So hopefully, let's see, there we go. So this little video shows you our autofocus in action. We have subject detection. So it's eye and face and birds and planes and vehicles, okay? And you can see how it stays right locked on with the subject. So our autofocus is absolutely as good as anybody else's in the industry. There are underwater housings available. There are these things called cinema cages available. And that's just extra stuff that you can get. These aren't necessarily things you have to buy. You can, especially in underwater housing. So this was actually shot up in La Jolla. We did a surf video with one of our cameras, and you can rent those underwater housings. The cages are very, very useful. It lets you attach things that you saw in some of those earlier pictures. Now, we also have smaller, more compact cameras, more retro design, because we are, like I said, a film company. We have a film legacy about us. We have what are called the XT series of cameras. The XT5 is the newest. It has the same sensor as the XH2. It's a $1,700 camera. It does 6K video, it does 40 megapixel stills, but it's smaller and it's lighter. And again, you know, look it up online for those of you that aren't here. it's got retro knobs for changing shutter speed and ISO instead of wheels. Been very, very popular. We've had those cameras around now for 10 years. We keep evolving them. So we also make these very, very high-end compact cinema zooms. Now, in the earlier photos, you saw on the shoulder rig and the one on a steady camera, very, very big cine zooms that are about that big. They weigh close to 20 pounds. They're $40,000 lenses. They're full-on, totally professional. But we also make some very affordable, accessible cine zooms called MKs and MKXs. They are in the $4,000 price range, and they come in the native mount for Fujifilm cameras called MKX, which is what I had used on my movies. They also come in the Sony E mount, M4/3, and by way of a dealer up in Los Angeles called Duclos Lenses, they adapt it for Canon RF. That's the Canon mirrorless mount. So you can get these lenses in 4 different mounts. They're very, very lightweight. All right, I'll tell you how good they are. James Cameron, okay, had bought 20 of these lenses to use on Avatar. 20 of them. They were using them on the Sony Venice camera in what was called in the crop mode. But if they're sharp enough for Avatar, they should be sharp enough for you. That's what I say. They look like this when you put them in a cine rig, and there's all the doodads and all the other stuff that you put on with that. One last slide here I'm going to show you, and then I'll just show you some quick things in an editing program. For those of you who are just getting started, this is what's called the timeline. This is the entire project of that movie that I made. It's an hour and 40 minutes long. That long green bar that goes across the top, all the way from the left to the right, that's the video part of the project. What's all that stuff underneath? That's audio. So as you can see, there's about 30 or 40 tracks of audio just for that little small indie film. And what that is different microphones for all the different actors, and it's sound effects and things like that. So for those of you getting into movie making, I'm going to tell you right now that the best and most incredible, the highest budget movie can be ruined if you have bad audio. So take classes in audio, learn how to do audio right, okay? Because it's definitely going to be really important for you. And then we have accessories, of course. Let me get out of that. And okay, we are now in an editing program called DaVinci Resolve. It is absolutely one of the top Hollywood post-production softwares that's been around for a long time. You can get it for free. It's a bit complicated. It does have a steep learning curve. But if you are going to be serious about this, I'd say look into it, because again, you don't have to pay for it. There is a $300 pro version of it that gives you some additional tools, but you don't need that for most things. You can also get Adobe Premiere Pro if you're on Creative Cloud. If you're not a Creative Cloud, you can download the Adobe Premiere Elements software, which has a different interface in Premiere Pro, but it does basically everything, and it's like $90 one-time purchase. If you're on a Mac, which I am, I've been on, there's Final Cut. Final Cut is $300. It's a one-time purchase, and you get upgrades forever. I've had Final Cut for over 15 years. Anyway, this is Resolve, and what I wanted to show you is something that, this is a project. These are some different projects that were shot in 8K. And what you can do with higher resolution is being able to punch in. So this is all single camera. This is just shot with one camera. It's locked off. And just like I showed you how to do the still plates, okay, you can, so these are some aerialists. And that's a close-up. And then I go back, that's the wide shot. So that's the master shot, shot in 8K. But all I need to do is I can create a pan. I can zoom in and I can actually pan the image instead of panning the camera. So you see how I'm cutting back between the whole full wide 8K shot and the cropped in shots without losing any detail, because the capture is much more resolution than the actual playback. Okay, that's all I have. I'm done. Thank you for joining me. Go to Fujifilm-x.com.
So I do have a question. A lot of the networks now, the major streamers, they require 4K.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see that going up at any point soon?
So, yes, definitely Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV, they do require 4K. I'll give the full answer is most of what people see at home these days, believe it or not, through cable and the streaming is actually HD. You may have a 4K TV, you may not be getting a 4K picture. Not only that, but they're also highly compressed, really, really compressed. But it works, and right, you're perfectly happy with it. But they do want you to acquire and deliver in 4K for future proof. Someday, all of that bandwidth for streaming and broadcast will catch up. It will be 4K. There probably won't be any HD. Now, honestly, if you're looking at it on an iPad, you're looking at it on a phone, what do you need 4K for? You don't, okay? You totally don't. There's no benefit to it. But yes, the answer is, yeah. Is it going to be required to go to 8K or more? There are 8K cameras out. There are 12K cameras out. NHK, the broadcast network in Japan, all of the Summer Olympics in Tokyo were all recorded in 8K video. In Japan, you could watch it in 8K if you wanted to, but not in the rest of the world. So it's there, it exists, but the infrastructure to get it to your house is not there. Like I said, the benefit of it is being able to repurpose your video. It's really, really cool to have an 8K video, and like I showed you, be able to punch in and recrop it in post. It's one camera and you can basically get multiple looks out of it. So it's a choice that you can make. But any other questions? I hear an alarm.